Hey, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your main man, Coach Eric Schwafel, coming at you with episode number 5 of the Unlocking Excellence podcast. I hope you've had a chance to listen to the other few episodes that we have. They're pretty good, right? They describe the different types of people and what excellence actually means. So if you haven't had a chance, definitely go and check those out. This week's episode is all about knowing thyself. It's all about knowing yourself and how crucial it is to actually getting the results that you want. Now, there are different ways that you can get to know yourself, and we're going to talk about all that kind of stuff. There are different tools that you can take, and obviously there's life. So knowing yourself, man, if that isn't a broad subject, then I don't know what is, right? Now, some people would say that, well, there actually is no self. And some might say that there are two different selves. There's the higher self and the lower self. There's the subconscious and there is the conscious mind, right? Some people might say that you are everything and everything is you. And there is no concept of real individual self, right? Really getting into it really, really fast. But we're going to save that a little bit later. Knowing yourself is simply being aware and conscious enough to make effective decisions in your life. We can define that even more broad. We can narrow it down. We can focus it to a specific area of life, whatever it might be. However, for me, knowing yourself is being aware enough of those things in life, your priorities in life, in order to make effective decisions for the future, for yourself and for others to help impact them positively. Now, there are a bunch of different ways that you can know yourself. Some people say they know themselves, however, they are unable to get themselves to take action upon what's important. Where I work as a coach, right, in fitness. So some people know what they need to do as far as working out and eating right. However, that we just don't do what it is that we need to do consistently. So for me, do you actually know yourself if you are unable to get yourself to take actions? Or are you unwilling? It's a discipline question, right? So we can really get into it. And one of the things that can really help us, right, you, me, advance forward, getting the results that we want, is learning about ourselves and why we think the way that we think or feel the way that we feel. If we don't know those things already, they can be pretty detrimental or they can be pretty impactful in the way that we move forward, that we become more of ourselves and the decisions that we make, and it determines our financial well-being, our physical fitness, our mental and emotional well-being. It can determine if we're addicts, if we use drugs, if we use food to fill voids in our life. So there are a bunch of different tests here that I'm going to mention, and there's also going to be a few applicable ways that you can learn this too. So all these are available to you right now. I did a few different Google searches and researched a little bit on the different types that are out there, the different types of tests. And one of them that comes right off the bat is like the angiogram. You can learn about yourself through the horoscopes, and you can learn about yourself through these different personality tests that they have online. Now, after looking at a bunch of these different tests and the different ways of doing things, what's available to you at your fingertips, not like with a psychiatrist or a psychologist to help you figure these things out. You have, with the psychologist and everything, you have tests like the Rorschach test. You have the, the temperament test. You have, you can use the 16 personality test. You can use, I can't pronounce it right, but the Eysenck personality questionnaire. There's a bunch of objective tests, and what they do is they summarize your answers and they give you an analysis based on your answers, right? So what exactly you are, and these have been proven and studied and tested with thousands and thousands of clients. They have stuff like, I don't know if I just mentioned it, but the angiogram, and the horoscope stuff, that's a little bit more loose. I think it's fun. I think that's great entertainment. And some people take it much more seriously and they know more science, the science and the evidence behind that. However, for me, what I've really found to be a beneficial test and a beneficial tool here is the Myers-Briggs test. Now, I'm sure that you're familiar with that, or you may not be familiar with that. If you're not, definitely look it up. It's also known as the 16 personality test. And it's based on 4 different principles or 4 different ways of seeing things. And those 4 have 2 options. So the Myers-Briggs personality test, what that does is it gives you a greater overview of your certain personality, certain tendencies that you might have, what your strengths could be, what your weaknesses could be. It gives a whole bunch of different information on how you can communicate better, how you can communicate with others, how others can communicate with you, how you can take criticism, how you can give criticism, where you're comfortable out in the social area of life, where you're comfortable on the inside of life, the core values that you need, right? You can also dive deeper into this with the 5 love languages and figuring out if you are more of a gift giver, receiver, if you're an act of service type person, if you're more along the lines of having quality time with people, if you're more along the lines of being more of a touchy-feely person, or if you need words of affirmation, if you need praise. All these things are for me now so essential in the relationship with myself and the relationship with others, because it just makes things better. If I know how to really show you love and give you love and help you receive that love in a greater way, then man, I'm going to do it, right? Because that's the way that I feel. And I would hope that if you have that same option, if you know how to do that too, then you would do that for me, right? Because that's what we want. We want the best for each other. So how do you really get to know yourself through these? They have simple tests that you can go to on the sites, and it will show you a bit of this. And you can even reflect back on your own life concerning the 5 love languages. There are 5, right? Which is acts of service. It is quality time. It is physical touch. It's words of affirmation, and it's gift giving. So when you have all 5 of those, right? Somebody you like to give love in a certain way, and you like to receive love in a certain way, and those can be different. Those can be very different, and they're different for males and they're different for females. You might notice males are more along the lines of active service and affirmations, whereas females love physical touch and quality time. And of course, that's different per individual. So with that being said, right, that's the 5 love languages. Let's dive deeper into the Myers-Briggs test. So it breaks down into 4 different sections, and each section has 2 different pieces. And man, I love this. There's a great book called Type Talk that goes much, much deeper into this. And so the first category, if you aren't familiar with this, the first category is extroverted or introverted. Now, I know where your thoughts just went. You know already if you're extroverted or if you're introverted. So let me give you a few qualities of each person. So an extrovert, they gain energy and they produce energy, and they get more enlivened when they're around people and in social settings, and when they can talk and they can interact. For an introvert, they are more or less drained in this situation. They almost have to put on a face. You see, where an extrovert gains energy from being out in the world and talkative and interactive, an introvert gets their energy and recharges when they're alone. They recharge maybe when they're in a small group of people. They recharge when they're in a trusted environment, right, where they feel secure and safe. Going out for an introvert is much more challenging than it is for an extrovert, because sometimes they feel like they have to put on a face, right? They have to be somebody different because it's just not their forte. It's not something that they do whenever they go out. You see extroverted people, they think out loud. They like to talk out loud. They have much more animated facial expressions, where an introvert might stay reserved and they might wait a little while to answer a question or to speak their truth. An extrovert might not do that. They're more at shoot then aim rather than aim then shoot, if that makes sense, right? So an introvert, they're less likely to speak up their own truth. They're less likely to give their opinion. They're more likely to go along with the flow. An extrovert, they stand up. They say what they need to say. They are going to be opinionated. They are your person who, I wouldn't say gives more resistance, but definitely questions. Introverts might not question as much depending on the personality, right? So that's the first one, right? So you are given a certain distinction, meaning like you'll see, but you are given a distinction. So the first letter of that 4-letter acronym would either be an E or an I. And you can kind of determine that right now. The test asks different questions to see this, but you kind of know, and you might think to yourself, hey, I switched back and forth between being an introvert and an extrovert. Well, look back on your childhood and what were you more of as a child? Did you notice that you were enlivened with social interactions, that you were more by yourself, that you enjoyed solitude, whatever it might be? Look back on childhood to really get a good one. So a good idea. So the next one is being intuitive, or it's being more of a sensor, okay? More of a sensor or intuitive. So what the distinctions for that would be, the intuitive would be an N, because we're not going to have two I's with introvert and intuitive. And with the sensor, it would be an S. So with this, believe it or not, a majority of males are sensors, a majority of females are intuitive. That doesn't mean that you won't see male intuitives or female sensors, but this is just what the statistics have really played out to be. And the difference is going to be the way that you interpret and perceive situations, circumstances, people, etc. So with a sensor, or excuse me, with an intuitive, you're looking at somebody who is looking between the lines, right? You're looking for somebody who's looking between the lines, who's looking to feel out the situation, right? You're looking for somebody who wants to use that hidden guidance within themselves. They kind of just have this feeling of knowing, right? Like, I know this is going to be different. I just have that feeling within myself. They're guided by something that they can't quite put their finger on. It's your internal and emotional guidance system, in case you didn't know. But there's this underlying feeling, right? Whereas a sensor, what they do is they are more observational, if that makes sense. A sensor looks to see what's going on in the situation. They look to see what is, not what is behind the scenes or behind the surface or in between the lines, but they look to see what is. And they make their decisions based off of that. So they sense, is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? They're very aware and in the moment and present. Not saying that an intuitive isn't, but an intuitive is more or less going to use their feelings and their emotions, whereas a sensor is going to use their senses. They're going to use what is around them in order to make their decision. So again, what are you now? Are you more intuitive? Are you more sensing? Look back in your childhood. Did you more or less use your nose, your ears, your mouth, your touch to make your decisions and to see things and perceive things? Or were you more intuitive with it and you observed, more so observed with your feelings and your emotions and how that felt? So that distinction. So now it's E or I for extrovert or introvert, and it's going to be S or N for sensing or intuitive. The third piece of this pie, the Myers-Briggs, is the thinker or the feeler. So very, not crazy often, but you'll see S, sensors and thinkers, they'll be in line with each other, and then you'll see intuitives and you'll see feelers, and they'll be usually neck and neck right there. Those are pretty close. Now, what does that mean? What does a thinker mean, and what does a feeler mean, right? Thinker or feeler. Exactly what it sounds like. So if you think about things, you use your head. You're using logic. You're more of a stoic, more likely. You are assessing the situation, the circumstance based on evidence that is provided. The things that you can see, that you can hear, that you can smell, that you can touch, the things that are real, that you can gather information with. That's going to be the thinker. They're going to process this thing out. They're going to have a system in place in order to make it the best that it can very much be. Very analytical, right? And then we have the feeler, who very much like the intuitive is going to relate and base their decisions on their feelings. This isn't a good feeling. That's not a good feeling. We really shouldn't do this, right? I don't have a good feeling about it. It's good to be right in the middle between these, right? Because sometimes we can't base everything off the way that we feel, but we can't always trust our thoughts. And I'll get into that a little bit later. So look back on childhood. I would say this and the sensor intuitive are probably they're two of the more challenging ones to do without the test, because they can be so close. And I definitely encourage you to look up more information about this. And then last but not least, we have the perceiver, and we have the judger. This one right here. Ooh, if there are two big distinctions between these personality types, it's going to be the judger and the perceiver, and the extrovert and the introvert. It is tough for them to cooperate because the judger is very specific. If you ask what time it is to a judger is going to tell you 6:15 or 6:30 or 6 p.m. They're going to give you an exact and specific time. If you ask a perceiver what time it is, they'll say it's getting late. They'll say, why do you want to know? The perceiver might say something along the lines of, it's 15 till. They're not going to give that specific answer. A perceiver is somebody who wants to gather more information and data before making a decision. There's always something more, right? You're observing, you're looking. If there's an issue, the perceiver is the mediator. They're the one that looks further into it to see, oh, this is why this person made this decision. However, for the perceiver, it can be pretty difficult to make a decision because they're always looking for new data. Whether it's leaving a job or leaving a relationship or gaining a job or making a choice, even at a freaking restaurant, it is difficult for a perceiver to make a decision because they were always gathering new information. They never cut it off. And that can be a big problem, being indecisive. Whereas a judger gathers what they feel like they need to know, whether it is to reinforce their opinion, their evidence, their perspective, or it's because they feel like they have enough information, and they will stop gathering information and they will make their decision and they will move forward. It's funny because I think to my relationships that I have with my parents, with my partner, with my clients, and sometimes I'll end up in the perceiver position and they'll end up as a judger, or I'll end up as a judger wanting to be the specific, and they'll answer me as a perceiver. And there's nothing, sometimes there's nothing more aggravating, right, than expecting an answer and then getting something else. We'll talk about expectations in the future. So with that being said, think about the arguments that happen between a judger and a perceiver just because they're answering differently. Think about the arguments that could be absolved. Think about the fights that could not be had, the divorces and the relationships that could actually grow from people that know how to communicate with each other. So which one are you? Are you somebody that constantly needs to gather data and has trouble perceiving, or has trouble making decisions, or is a bit more indecisive? Or are you one that, hey, when you have what you have and you know what you know, you're going to make the decision, you're going to move forward no matter what? Go ahead, look up the Myers-Briggs test. I really like the one on 16personalities.com, I think is what it is. And I like to take that. Me personally, I am an INFP. I'm an introverted, intuitive, feeling perceiver. What's cool is then you can look up what your percentage is, right? How many personalities are there like you out there? And real brief story, I've always been more of a different fellow compared to my fellow man. And what this let me know is that there are only, I believe it's 2.5 to 3% of males that have my personality. And I think it's maybe 3 to 5% of females that have this personality. So no wonder why I was different than everybody else, because of this reason. And it kind of gives you that idea of, this is the way that I am, and this is exactly me. And now I can learn how to communicate to myself better. And if I can communicate to myself better, y'all, if you can communicate to yourself better, you're going to be able to communicate to your partner, your spouse, your other relationships, your parents, your clients, whoever it might be, your coworkers. You're going to be able to speak with them in such a way that there's no confusion. Why would there be confusion? So let's get into it a little bit more. What is there in communicating? There's 4 different phases that happen in communicating. There is the intention of what you want to say. There is, what you actually say. There is what is heard by the receiver, by the person receiving and listening. And there's what they think and perceive about what they hear. So let's take a second to see how confusing communication can get, and how particular and specific one must be in order to communicate properly. Because there's the intention, there's what you're thinking about that you want to say. Then what you actually say. So sometimes what you think you say and what you say is completely different. Completely different. And it's so confusing. It happens to me all the time. I'll say one thing, but I mean something completely else. And thank God I have people in my life who are like, Eric, what did you just say? So I can re-say it in a better way. Then there is what you actually say. So it might be a little bit different. Now, here's the thing. What you actually say might be different from what they hear. Right? Think about it. What time is it? In your mind, you're asking specifically what time it is, but what they might hear is they want to know if it's late or if it's early. That's not what you asked, but that's what they heard, right? That's what they perceived. That's what they understood. So there's what they hear, and it's what they think about what they hear. Y'all, so many people in today's world take things personal. They are offended by anything and everything, and there is so much resistance that is met within themselves, they can't help but meet you with resistance. So what is it that you do? Do you meet them with more resistance? No, you increase your awareness. You watch your response. You notice what you're answering with. Is it with emotion or is it from a calm, neutral state? And then you answer back. And you communicate with somebody. Because believe it or not, when you take things personally and offensively, emotions get stirred. And when emotions are stirred, shit hits the fan. Not all the time, of course, but shit hits the fan. So knowing thyself, knowing yourself, it is absolutely crucial to your success as an individual and our success as a species. You can use different tests. Go ahead, check the beginning of this podcast in order to see what tests you can do. But you can use different tests. And believe it or not, man, when I found out about this a long time ago, and then I got into it a few months ago again, and I asked everybody in my world to do it. I asked my mom, my dad, I asked my girlfriend, right? I asked my best friends. I asked even my clients to do it. I asked people that are acquaintances that I talk to often, because now I know that I'm an INFP, right? And I'm like borderline on some of these, like 49% one and 51% the other. But now that I know that I'm an INFP, it gives me a greater understanding of who I am so I can communicate with people and I can say, hey, man, I'm not one to really go out and be social. How about we meet at a quieter spot instead? Or, hey, man, I'm asking what time it is. Could you give me the exact time? Or, hey, I'm not really feeling this. I know that it might be a little bit off, but you think we could look at a different approach? It allows me to communicate, and it allows me to stay more balanced, and allows me to communicate better with other people. So I know that if somebody is going to be more of a judger, I know that I can be more specific with that person so that our conversation can be beneficial to both of us. And that's as simple as it is, y'all. That's the reason behind this emotional intelligence stuff and this personality stuff and this psychology stuff, is so that you can better communicate and in the long run, honestly, get what you want and help other people get what they want. Think about it. Most people don't get what they want because they don't ask. Most people don't ask because they're too scared to ask. Most people are too scared to ask because they're afraid that they're not going to get what they want. Most people are afraid they're not going to get what they want because they don't really know how to communicate it and tell people what they want. And most people don't know how to do that because they never learned. Crazy, right? So I absolutely encourage you to get to know yourself through these tests and through these tools. And there are other ways too, y'all. There are workshops, these wonderful emotional intelligence workshops that are really, they can be super out there, but they help you know yourself better. They help you clear your past. They help you become more of who you are. I think Landmark, MITT, there's Atlas, I believe ALA is another one, the Boston Breakthrough Academy. A few of these guys have coached me, and I've done a few of their personal programs, and they work. They're really good. Of course, going to see a counselor or a therapist. Many people don't know this about me, and I usually keep it under wraps, but I figure, this is a good chance to be vulnerable. I went to therapy for 3 years. One of my best friends, he died while tiki tubing here in Louisiana. And it was my breaking point. I was in a really terrible relationship at the time, and I didn't even know it was a terrible relationship. I was in a really toxic work environment. The expectations that my employer had on me were not the expectations that I believed I had on myself. So there was a lot of me just moving forward and doing what I thought was right, because I thought that's what I needed to do. I didn't know myself or what I wanted or communicated. I was doing what everybody else wanted me to do. So when I went to therapy, I started going to counseling. The first day I started bawling because the guy knew my best friend who died. He still is, right? He's alive. He was a Catholic priest. My therapist worked at the Vatican for a while. He's a great guy. Great guy. And we worked together for 3 years. And we went through work, we went through relationships, relationships with myself, with my parents, with my friends, how I showed up, how I operated. We dove deep, and believe me, he's booked up right now, but believe me, I would still be doing that therapy. I think everybody should go to therapy because you learn about yourself. You journal. That's a good way to reflect. You journal. You ask yourself questions that you might not normally ask, and you hold yourself accountable. You have somebody else that holds you accountable too. Not a lot of people do it. It sucks evaluating yourself and reflecting, because we can be so judgmental on who we are. But once you move past that, y'all, once you move past judging yourself and just seeing this is the way that things are, and this is the way that things were, and this is the way that things, this is how it led up to happen, then you can start to offer yourself a bit of forgiveness and those around you a bit of other forgiveness. And you start feeling so much better because you know that you have the power to change. So by learning to know yourself, you get to see what you've picked up from other people, what they've programmed into you, what you've accepted and what you've allowed. You get to see how that's not serving you anymore, how it's not a good thing for you to keep operating from this place in life. It's funny. I was talking with my clients about getting debt free and how it took me 2 times. I had 2 times where I got big into debt as a business owner, and it happens. It's at the beginning. However, I said, I will not let this happen a 3rd time. It might, but I will not let it, because I'm tired of dealing with it. And I've communicated that to myself, and I've made it something that is a must, a priority for me. So I asked my clients, and I coach weightlifting and nutrition. I said, how many times are we going to tell ourselves that we are going to start over? How many times are we going to tell ourselves that this is the last time that we're going to do this thing? We must find another way to communicate with ourselves better, more effectively. And the way that we do that is by knowing who we are, why we think what we think, why we feel what we feel, why we say what we say, but not getting stuck there, changing it and moving forward. You could even go out on a limb and even say you don't need to evaluate your past. You just need to address what comes up in the now. So with that being said, I encourage you to maybe find a licensed professional, not somebody on the internet who says they can help you, but somebody with the credentials and the education to help you and to support you in your growth. Because y'all, this shit, it is deep. Sometimes it's very dark, and you need somebody who will remain stable with you throughout this experience and is connected to you and not to the money, right? So you can find a licensed physical therapist, find the right fit. You don't have to go with the right first person either. You can start journaling, look at yourself in the mirror. You can get an accountability partner, a workout partner. Even just exercising is a good way to know yourself, because you know what you'll push yourself to do and what you won't push yourself to do. Put yourself in uncomfortable situations. If you're not a speaker, go and join Toastmasters. Go to just one of them. Go to a local networking group so you can talk with people. You can, become more interactive. Go take these personality tests, learn about yourself, research this stuff, encourage your family and your friends to do it. Because guess what? If you learn about yourself and you tell them how awesome you feel learning about yourself, they're going to want to learn about themselves, and they're going to want to tell you about them, and you're going to want to tell yourself to them. Yeah, you're going to want to tell them about you. And then you get to learn about each other, you get closer, and you're connecting more. What? So when you get to know yourself better, you get to know those in your life more too. And for me, it's ABC. It's always about connecting. Always about connecting. So with that being said, y'all, what's the transformational takeaway here? It is going to be to get to know yourself. Journal, question, communicate, grow, understand, learn. Take responsibility and ownership of this. If you want a better relationship with yourself, if you want results, if you want a better relationship with other people, get to know yourself. And if you don't know how to do that, find someone to help you start. Whether it's me, whether it's a coach, whether it's a licensed counselor, whether it's your best friend who you just need to talk to. Start figuring out ways to communicate to yourself and others in a way that allows you to be fully authentic, to be courageous, and to, I would say, even be daring. Because it takes vulnerability in order to communicate properly, especially getting to know yourself. It is. I think Lao Tzu said it. I'm not afraid of the man who has conquered 10,000 enemies, but the man who has conquered himself. Something along those lines. Isn't that deep? I am not afraid of the man who has conquered 10,000 enemies, but I am of the man who has conquered himself. Maybe that was a play on the Bruce Lee one. It was like, I'm not afraid of the man who has done 10,000 kicks one time, but the man who's done one kick 10,000 times. Master yourself. 10,000 hours. I love you. I hope you have a great day. You're unstoppable. And if you enjoyed this, please hit the subscribe button, share this thing out, and I will be back next week to give you a little bit more. I hope you have a great day. And yeah, peace.